Hello, 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 and welcome to our panel discussion on shaping the future of television. What are we going to talk about today? Well, we're going to cover the hot issues in video streaming in 2022 and the years to come. We'll focus on the big content delivery topics such as open caching, the cloud, 5G, and a few more, stuff that should be on your radar for the years to come. My name is Andy Waltenspiel, and I'm excited to be your host and moderator of this panel discussion with Velocix today. In my day job, I'm advising and challenging thought leaders and innovators of our telco and media industry to connect the dots and to connect people. Now, few words on housekeeping. We're going to record this panel so you can watch it later. You get a link via email in the coming days. We have a Q&A at the end. But send us your question at any time you want using the QA button at the bottom of your Zoom window. We'll get to the questions at the very end. And we'll have a little poll somewhere in the middle. I'll instruct you how to use that. We'll just scan the barcode ideally from the screen that we're going to show you and use that to participate in the poll. Perfect. I think we are all set. The Christmas tree is ready. The panelists are ready. So I want to call Jim and Craig on stage. Are you there? Hello.
We are. Hi, Andy.
Yeah, hey, nice to see you. Great to have you. So Jim Brickmeier and Craig Sinasac from Velocix. And I would ask both of you, please introduce yourself, introduce Velocix, and maybe Jim, you want to go first?
Sure. I'm Jim Rickmeyer. I head up the product and marketing organizations at Velocix. And just for folks that are not familiar with who Velocix is, we're a leading supplier of software-based video streaming and advertising technology, focused on telecommunications providers, broadcasters, content providers, and other companies interested in building out their own video delivery frameworks.
And a few words about yourself, Jim. What's your role? What do you do at Velocix?
Yeah, so I head up both the product organizations. So I have the product team that reports to me, as well as the marketing organization. So I work on the long-term strategy for the company, focus on making sure that our products, from a roadmap perspective, support that strategy, and then communicate those messages as to the things that we're doing out to our customers so that they know what's coming. And some of the things that we're going to do today are really to talk about some of those areas that Velocix is spending a lot of time on, and trying to work with customers to understand really what kind of technologies are going to change the shape of television in the future. And so that's what hopefully we'll expose today through some of the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Jim. And Craig, on your side.
Yes. Hey, thank you, Andy. So Craig Sinasac, I lead the engineering and architecture teams here at Velocix. Work very tightly with Jim in looking at where the evolution of the market is going, and I have what I think is the fun job. I get to work with cool and new technologies to make sure we're evolving our product suite to stay in step with where the market is moving. So. Got a great team behind us. We look very forward and evolve the products to make sure that we're in step. So that's what I do.
Perfect. Thank you, Craig, as well. So Jim, you mentioned it. You look at the long-term horizon. You make sure you also communicate stuff. I think we saw something this morning, recent news and announcement on open caching. So tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. Yeah, it was big news for us. We launched an open caching product this morning. For folks that are not familiar with what open caching is a set of interface standards for CDNs that's been published by the Streaming Video Alliance. And the goal of open caching is really to foster interoperability between the different kinds of content delivery technologies that are used to deliver content over the internet and through internet service provider networks. And the goal here is really to improve the quality video streams that are viewed on consumer devices. But there are also several business opportunities and advantages for the various stakeholders involved. On one end, you have the content providers that increasingly these days are launching direct-to-consumer services, and they're interested in scaling out those platforms as quickly as possible and making sure that consumers have a good experience on those platforms. And then on the ISP side, internet service providers, whether that be wireline service providers or mobile service providers, there are new opportunities from a business perspective for those operators to generate some money by participating in the value chain associated with over-the-top content delivery.
Okay, so I noted improvement of quality, business opportunities, both for ISPs and the content providers.
Correct.
Is that it? That in summary, and it's the benefits the same for both of them, or do we need to differentiate? We might have both of these types of viewers in our audience today.
Sure. Yeah, it's different benefits for the different stakeholders involved. On the content provider side, the goal is really to figure out ways of improving the quality and the reliability of video streams delivered to the consumers that subscribe to these direct-to-consumer services. And it's also the objective of open caching is to find ways to reduce the overall spend associated with delivering that content, especially as those services scale out. The tendency is that as the number of consumers grow, and as the volume of traffic grows, the amount of viewing grows. Today, content providers typically are using global CDN services to deliver that content to the end consumer, and they pay those global CDN providers based on the number of bits of data that are delivered to the end consumer. So as consumers are watching more and more and more content, the content providers are paying more and more money to those global CDN services, which is great if you're a global CDN service provider, but not so great if you're on the content provider side. And so, so that's the objective of open caching for content providers, is find some ways to number one, reduce the cost of delivery, but also to improve the quality of the video services. And they can do that by partnering directly with some of the internet service providers that own that last mile network.
Okay, so I guess the network operators, the ISPs are really interested. What about the content owners? Is that topic getting traction? Can you share a few names maybe?
Yeah, I can't really talk too much about the the content providers that have stepped into this outside of the stuff that's been publicly stated. As an example, Disney has been one of the companies that has publicly talked about open caching and has expressed their support for it. But I direct you to the if you take a look at the Streaming Video Alliance site and look at the participants in that forum, and you'll see a lot of media companies that are very interested in this open caching framework. And I would say we didn't really talk about the ISP side of the equation as well. I mean, one of the big points of interest for ISPs in participating in this is not that they're benevolent and that they want to they just want to improve the quality of these OTT services, but that really it's opening up a new revenue stream for the ISPs. If they implement open caches within their network, they can start charging, actually, cut out the middleman, so to speak, and establish some direct connections with some of these content providers. And instead of those content providers paying the global CDN services, because they can get better stream quality, they can reduce session startup latency. What you see is that they can offer a better service effectively than a global CDN can to the content provider, and they can do it at lower cost. And so they have an opportunity to actually win market share or capture some market share that normally money would have been spent with global CDNs. Instead, what we're seeing is an opportunity for ISPs to step in, capture some of that market for carrying the traffic to consumers and doing it with much better quality of service.
Okay, sounds great. From a commercial promise, Craig, how easy or difficult is it to implement that from a technical side of things? Is it rocket science or is it straightforward?
Yeah, no rocket science is required, fortunately. Open caching is really just an extension of the existing CDN specifications. As some may know, Velocix has been heavily involved in the development of those specifications. So for us, adding support for open caching is really just an extension of our software. So we have we've been able to develop it in such a way that it's really a software upgrade that you apply to your existing CDN network. And that'll allow operators to take advantage of any unused capacity that they may have in their network to allow additional revenue streams for them. So it's a software upgrade for our existing customers, and or of course an expansion of capacity if needed, but straightforward from a technology perspective.
I always like it when you say, you make it sound like it was nothing, you did it last weekend, and then today we got the press release. I guess there's a bit more involved.
It takes a little bit longer than that. A little bit of, fortunately, we were heavily involved at the beginning, like I said, from a specification perspective. So we understand it very well. It's really integral to our DNA. And so for us to add this additional software layer, it took a little planning, but it was straightforward from an implementation perspective.
Perfect. Great. But Jim, I want to go back to the commercials and say, okay, who pays who in the future? You said, okay, the money flows will change a bit, and I'm not sure that the big global CDNs will be happy about this, but that's another topic. Now, with open caching, who pays who, and how do you get started?
Yeah, so well, let's talk a little bit about the commercial model, because there are a lot of different options that can be supported in open caching frameworks. So first of all, today, as I mentioned, in a traditional delivery of direct-to-consumer services, typically what you have is the content provider pays a global CDN provider based on the amount of traffic that's being delivered to consumers. But what you find is that those global CDN providers, while they're providing a portion of the network, right? They provide it from the content provider to a certain point. That point of the endpoint of a global CDN service, it actually terminates inside of an ISP network. And so the traffic that travels through a global CDN goes all the way to that point, and then ISPs carry it the rest of the way. Unfortunately, today, ISPs don't make any money from delivering that traffic, at least not from content providers. What they do is they charge consumers for a subscription for the high-speed data services to go ahead and access the internet. What open caching does is it positions ISPs so that they can participate from a commercial standpoint in the delivery of that content. They're carrying it anyway today, but they can do it much more efficiently, and they can do it with much better quality through the use of open caching technology. And so one of the opportunities, if you just take it, today, global CDN services are not going away. They're not threatened by this stuff, in the sense that there's so much traffic, right? The market is growing fast. And the expectations are that there's going to be substantial growth in the global CDN service space. What we're talking about here, though, is that ISPs can carry a portion of the streaming traffic, and they can provide a redundant path in some cases, right, to some of these global CDN services. And they can establish these direct relationships with the content providers, so that in some cases you can reduce the amount of traffic that runs through these global CDNs. So you can tie open caching systems to the global CDN frameworks and just reduce your spend with global CDNs. Or alternatively, yeah, you can cut out the middleman in some circumstances where you don't even need a global CDN provider in the middle. You just directly connect an ISP with the content provider systems and establish a commercial arrangement around that. So the wallet spend, so to speak, of a content provider just pivots from, hey, yesterday I was spending a bunch of money with global CDN services. Tomorrow I'll spend that money with internet service providers. And clearly from the content provider side, like their goal is to try to compress the amount of money that they're spending. So they're hoping that they're going to get some discount associated with that model. But on the other side, they're also getting real benefits from working with ISPs relative to the global CDN services, because the ISPs own that last mile network. That last mile network is really the most important network for delivery of streaming services, because if that fails, it doesn't matter how good the network is upstream of that. And so what we also see is, like, if you place those caches deep in the last mile network, you shorten the distance between the servers and the users. And in doing that, you reduce the risk of things like network congestion and latencies and other sorts of things that might happen when content is traversing a long multi-hop network. And so you can remove some of those risks, and you can deliver much better quality, much better stream continuity, faster session setup times. So there's a very measurable advantage to the content providers in working directly with ISPs through the implementation of these open caching specs.
Okay, so that means if I'm Liberty, if I'm Vodafone, means I should pick up the phone and call Disney, say, "Hi guys, how does it work?" The ISPs will need a direct commercial relationship with, not just for the content, but now also for the CDN. Is that correct?
But well, potentially. I mean, there are opportunities for them to do that. What we find in many cases, though, is that they're looking for some assistance in establishing those connections and really understanding what those commercial relationships look like. And this is something like companies like Velocix can help facilitate some of those connections. You know, if it's big, if you have a big operator and a big content provider, they may want to directly connect in order to establish those agreements. And we work with a lot of those content providers, and we can facilitate those connections so that they can establish those direct agreements. In other cases, it doesn't necessarily make sense for them to do that if you've got a bunch of smaller content providers. Many of the internet service providers, they don't want to deal with 100 different content providers that want to gain access to their open caching framework. And for that, Velocix and others can broker those kinds of relationships, and we establish those agreements, and then we work out a commercial framework with ISPs where we share in the proceeds associated with that. And so there are a lot of different models, and it's something that we're actively in discussions with a variety of ISPs around, and trying to find what is the ideal model for ISPs and how can we facilitate those connections. And that's really where we position ourselves. We're not trying to be a middleman, so to speak, if it's not beneficial to ISPs. If it is, then absolutely, those are things that we do.
Makes sense. So now we heard from you what are some of the benefits. Now we want to hear from you, dear audience. What do you think would be the compelling benefits for you in your network with open caching? And for that, we have a poll. So let's show the link, please, and the barcode. So we'll have that ready. Here it is. So it's use any browser on any device. It's polyv.com WMC222, or easier, take your phone and scan the barcode. You just need to add your name, no password. Just go there, polyv.com WMC222, and then vote which ones of the following alternatives do you think is the most attractive for you. So let's show the question if we can. Exactly. So options are new revenue streams from monetizing OTT, higher quality OTT streaming, Is it the reduced startup latency or richer data about OTT content consumption? I think some people still need some time. Let's go back to the panelists, and maybe a production team, let's continue to show the link. It might be across my picture then, so you'll solve that. There we go. I just stand up. Jim, Craig, or maybe Craig, from your side, what do you hear the customers saying? You're working with them already, I guess, even if the PR is only out this morning. Mm-hmm. So what do they say? What's the most beneficial thing for them?
Well, I think the feedback I understand from them is that they like the opportunity. They've already got an established CDN network, so with a overlay allows them to drive additional content through their network, provide fantastic experience to their end users, and drive additional revenue. So I think it's a very natural fit if you have an existing framework of CDNs available to overlay additional high quality content.
Great. And Jim, from your side, which of the four do you think is the most relevant?
I think it's going to be the money.
Yeah.
I mean, I think at the end of the day, that's what the open caching opportunity is really all about, is figuring out how do you participate in this this market that has been growing. I mean, we see, if you just watch the news, right, every day there's a story about another content provider entering the direct-to-consumer market. There's a lot of consolidation and growth in that space, deep investment and content creation for these direct-to-consumer services. You know, if you just look 5-10 years down the road, I think we all believe that there's going to be an increase in the amount of traffic over these direct-to-consumer services. The question for internet service providers, today they offer pay TV services with their own branded content, and we expect that that's going to continue, right, for quite a while. But there's an opportunity here, right, for ISPs to leverage the same networks that they use to deliver their own pay TV services, to deliver other types of content and to generate additional revenue, to generate a better ROI on the investments they've made in their last mile network and the investments they've made in their CDN frameworks, and to participate more actively, right? Why leave this market to the global CDNs who are generating substantial growth off of this? Participate in the space, take some share.
Yep.
Good. So let's go back and see what the results are so far. What do people think?
It's like money. They're agreeing with Jim.
Yeah, absolutely. And it makes sense. Yeah. In the end, we're here for the money, not for fun. Well, there's impacts. The better quality will impact the NPS and hopefully then the money and reduce the churn. So it all connects together. Good. By the way, dear audience, if you have questions for us, use the Q&A tool, not the chat. Use the Q&A to send questions, and then we'll take care of them towards the end. So anytime you have some, send us your questions and we'll get there. I think that let's move to the next topic. We said we want to do an outlook, and what can be an outlook of 2022 without talking about 5G. We're launching everywhere on each of the continents, not sure in Antarctica, but 5G. Jim, what's your take? Is video delivery over 5G, is that the killer app? Is it coming? When is it coming?
Yeah, it's really interesting. Clearly we've seen a lot of investment in 5G networks around the globe. Something like 160 providers around the world now have deployed 5G networks and are making those services available to consumers. But what you notice when you look at some of the market reports on 5G is that while investment in 5G networks has been very healthy, that adoption, in particular in some of the Western markets, Europe and the US, has actually lagged some of that investment and lagged projections. Some of that may be due to pandemic related stuff, but not all. And there have been some surveys of customers out there, like, what is slowing this down? Why have they not adopted 5G when it has all of these advantages to consumers? And what you find is that there's a lack of awareness of the benefits of 5G. Many people think, oh, 4G is good enough. I'm not really going to get anything from moving to 5G. But interestingly, when you talk to those same consumers about, okay, let's explain the benefits of 5G and let's talk about how you would intend to get a benefit from these 5G networks, they immediately go to video streaming. So video streaming is expected to be the top activity on 5G networks. And according to IHS research, they're saying 81% of respondents that they spoke with under the age of 50 say streaming is going to be the top activity for them on their 5G connections. So when we go and look at what's really important for network operators that are investing in 5G networks, it's trying to figure out how do you offer benefits to these consumers who are expecting video streaming to be their main usage of that, right? So some of the stuff we just talked about around open caching is one example of something that can improve the video quality for consumers. But there are other sorts of things on the pay TV side as well, which is like offering different types of services to consumers over that 5G network and making sure that the TV services, the traditional things that you get on the big screens, that you can access them on all sorts of other smaller screens. And I think there's also a big opportunity for communication service providers on the advertising side. Which is a very deep topic, but as you start to look at mobility, location-based services, and really understanding, as people are moving around, there are opportunities to advertise for local businesses and other sorts of things, and communication service providers are in a great position to enable additional types of advertising revenue through their understanding of individuals' locations and their ability to manipulate those streams as they're delivered to interject localized advertisements.
Okay, so it's advertisement as a video, as a form of video. It's true. Okay, so video will be the killer app. Craig, what does 5G mean for CDNs? Is that simply transparent and not a big deal? Again, you do a weekend and it's done, or is there a bit more involved this time?
Yeah, so it's a little bit more involved this time. And I do have 2 young girls, and while we've got a large screen at home, they tend to they tend to watch a lot of video on their mobile, and so I think it's important that we need to be able to get those caches very close to the edge of those mobile networks so they can deliver really high-speed, good quality network. So we need to get those caches near the edge of the network. So what we need to do is we need to be able to run our CDNs in the MEC environment. In order to do that, I think really a multi-platform strategy is required. So we have built our products based on container technologies, and by utilizing technologies like Kubernetes, we can drive those products to run anywhere on any platform, really. And in this case, for 5G, we need to run these near the edge in the MEC environments, and we'll deliver smaller CDNs to run in that environment to get those caches very close to the edge.
Okay, so 2 topics that we now need to cover. One is the 5G. One of the promises is the ultra low latency. The other one, of course, is the cloud. Let's go with cloud first, because you were talking about the edge, MEC, all that kind of stuff. So cloud, definitely nothing works without cloud anymore. We all know this. People, if you are not doing the journey, start now. You don't want to be the last ones to go there. But what do you see happening from your perspective in cloud tech in 2022? What are your thoughts, Craig? What is happening? What needs to happen?
Yeah, so as it relates to cloud tech, again, the previous mentioned technologies that I referred to are obviously very applicable to running in a cloud environment. So I see some improvements that it offers are around rapid startup time, rapid deployment times. Everyone's going to get flexibility to make sure they've got the content in the right locations. So for us, we've got a number of products that work very well in this environment. We've got a video recording manager, which runs in the cloud, which provides a nice multi-tenant solution for operators. And all of our products will be utilizing the containerization and Kubernetes technologies to be able to run in the cloud for things like added resiliency, for rapid capacity expansion, and a number of other use cases similar to that.
Good. Jim, what do you see from your side, more from the marketing, commercial side of things?
Sure.
What are the big things?
Well, so, the big interest from most of the customers that we work with is that, they're not necessarily looking to move everything into cloud environments. They're looking for the advantages of the cloud. So they want to add some flexibility to their platforms through what's called hybrid cloud technology, right? So the idea is to append some of the systems that they have and some of the network capacity that they have today with the flexibility of the cloud so that they can handle some of these changes in demand or quick launch new systems or new features and functionality. And so let's take an example of a live streaming services. Today there's a fixed capacity on ISP networks. And so when you're delivering live traffic, you have to have servers in place in order to carry the volume of traffic that you think you're going to get. With live traffic, oftentimes when the audience grows, the capacity requirements grow for those on-net systems. And so you can imagine for like events, like a big event, if you've got a World Cup soccer event, or you've got the Olympics, or you got something along those lines, the challenge for a communication service provider is that they're going to need to add capacity to support this growth in the audience. And they don't know how big it's going to grow in many cases. You don't know what the viewership is actually going to be for many of these systems. So the challenge for them is in figuring out, how do I get some flex capacity in the systems that they build out? And there are a couple of ways to do that. One is you build that flex capacity in your network, where you have some private servers that you can flex the capacity of your CDN into, which you can do with some of the containerization and orchestration technologies that Greg mentioned. Or you can use public CDN capabilities that you can use infrastructure that's built out by companies like Google Cloud and Amazon and others, and you can burst capacity out of your private network into those other environments to support some scalability in your platform when you need it. That also offers some resiliency benefits for operators as well. If you have an individual hub site or something like that you have some disaster at, it catches fire, the floods come in and wash the servers away, you still have the ability to go and deliver content as well, which is critically important, especially when those consumers are watching, right? Is during these big events. If you're watching the World Cup tournament and your TV service goes out, you will start to question why you are paying a subscription fee for that. Yeah. So that's a very important component for especially for these pay TV service providers, where they're like, look, people are paying a lot of money for these connections. They're paying for access to entertainment, and they pay for it to be on, especially when these really critical events are happening. And so some of this hybrid cloud tech enables you to secure that system and gives you the flexibility to adapt to whatever the conditions may be. So I think that's what we're going to see in 2022 is a lot of activity around that, a lot of activity around how do you effectively use that do it efficiently, do it at the lowest cost possible. And that's the kind of stuff that we're working on from a software standpoint, is the technology that lets you balance it, balance the load, really understand what's going on, and to see it also on the screen, right? You got to be able to see the performance and make sure that you can manage your business.
So that's the benefits, that's the technology. What about the mindset? So I had a few other panels where people said, okay, lift and shift does not work, of course. So take what you have, just put it in the cloud, and then we pray. Yeah, better pray, because it's not likely to work. It requires also a mindset shift for that move. So is that something you see your customers struggle with, or you support them somehow in that journey? So how does it work?
Yeah, well, it's different for different operators. Some are very aggressive with this, and they, it's like they pointed at the cloud, and they're working really hard to push. They are trying to push everything into the cloud and being very aggressive with it, recognizing that there are always complications and technology barriers, and the point is start the push early and see where those barriers are, and then work on those barriers to try to solve those problems. And I actually think that's a great strategy, right? Like personally, I agree with that. As like, let's go and run for where we think the industry is headed, and let's go solve those problems. We do have other operators that are hesitant, and the rationale for being hesitant is that today some of the economics of moving certain aspects of their content delivery platforms and so on into the cloud are challenging, right? I mean, especially if you're carrying huge amounts of data, the egress costs out of some of these cloud environments can mount, right? And so the key is trying to figure out, like, you've got to model it out. You really got to understand how much traffic you're going to send out of each of these systems, and try to figure out whether you can get the benefit out of it by saving cost in other areas. And that's why I think the discussion is really focused on this hybrid cloud, because I think when you go through the economic model between cloud and on-premise technology, you end up with it's like a financial analysis that says we can move this thing and we can do it cost effectively, and we can save money, and we can improve quality and resiliency and all that other stuff. That stuff is absolutely, we're going to move that. But this other stuff, if you can't figure out the cloud economic model right now, you say, well, no, we're not going to do that part, right? That part we can do within our own network, and that's the most cost-effective way. We get better quality and so on. And so then the question is, how do you manage both of those frameworks from a common interface and a common set of measurement, so that ultimately consumers don't know the difference between cloud and on-premise, right? The quality has to be the same. And that means that the measurements and the management and the control planes and so on need to be unified across them, so that from an operational standpoint, you can keep a consistent service.
Okay. Good. So we talked about 5G, cloud, hybrid cloud, on-prem versus cloud, open caching. So let's get to ultra low latency. That's one of the features we need for autonomous driving, for example, from 5G. But I think if we talk in the video delivery context, ultra low latency means something different. So what is it? We've been talking about it for a long time. Is it finally coming, or is it still future tech? Where are we?
Yeah, well, I think that it's funny. We've talked about ultra low latency for many years. So exactly. Yeah, and we're talking about future technologies, and in some ways, ultra low latency feels like it doesn't belong in that discussion, because we've talked about it so much. But in reality, not very many people have deployed true ultra low latency technologies, and part of the rationale for why that has not happened yet is that there are a lot of integrations required. You have to integrate each of the systems that are involved, all the way from the encoders through to the players, and all of the systems in between, and make sure that they all function. And then there's some specialized tuning that you have to do in order to make sure that you get the best possible performance. And we haven't, many people haven't completed all of those integrations and testing and so on. And 2021 was an interesting year for that, because I think there was a lot of activity around that and trying to get those systems bound together and to qualify them and get prepared for actual deployments of ultra low latency technology. And so I think that 2022, looking at it from a future perspective, I think you're going to see ultra low latency finally get implemented, and it really won't be a future issue next year. Like, it will be very current and implemented. But I do think there's another aspect to ultra low latency beyond just what we've talked about in the video streaming context. Typically we talk about things like ultra low latency CMAF formats and compressing latency to somewhere in the range of 2 to 5 seconds, which is roughly equivalent to what you get for broadcast kinds of TV latencies. But increasingly, the attention on ultra low latency is pivoting toward what comes next. How do we compress latency even more than 2 to 5 seconds? Because for certain types of applications, like cloud gaming, for VR and AR types of applications and so on, it has to be much, much lower, right? Milliseconds worth of delay. And so this is where the attention is really focusing. How do we do that? How do we do it and scale it out and make sure that if you've got millions of subscribers accessing the system, that they can all get access to their content with sub 1 second response times and lower, so that you could support some of those types of applications.
I don't want to have a remote surgery with a 5-second delay.
Yes, that's right. That's true. I don't want to have remote surgery. You can put it
in the first place.
At the end of that sentence. Yeah.
Agree. Okay, so technically it seems not easy. So maybe a good point for Craig. What are the key challenges with ultra low latency? Jim mentioned already, you need to integrate in each and every piece of the delivery chain. But where the devil is in the detail, where is it?
Yeah, actually, as Jim alluded to, the challenge is actually in the ecosystem. The ecosystem hasn't evolved sufficiently. From a technology perspective, we have implemented ultra low latency in some of our products, and we are anxious to get it deployed and integrate with the rest of the ecosystem and find out where the challenges are and what tweaks need to be done on top of that. Additionally, there aren't a lot of tool vendors that make products available that we can test our implementation. So we've had to work tightly with some vendors for them to build that capability. And it's really about integration into the ecosystem. And then once we do that, we're going to find perhaps some of the elements in the ecosystem have too high latency, or the budgets need to be shifted between the different nodes, the latency budget that is. And it's going to be a evolution of tuning and tweaking to get that get those numbers down into the low second range. So not a pure technology challenge for us at the moment. It's really an ecosystem and availability of ecosystem.
Okay, so it sounds almost if somebody was buying all their products from Velocix, it would be heaven, almost. Yeah? I'm exaggerating, of course.
Highly recommended.
It's Christmas soon, you can have wishes.
Exactly.
Good, let's move to the next topic. What else should we look out for 2022? And we talked about video delivery, and I think, Jim, you mentioned it already. I want to come back to that. Advertising. Not only in the 5G context. So what's out there, new stuff for video advertising? It's gathering pace already now. We see the first launches, but what's coming in the next year?
Yeah. Okay. So dynamic advertising, addressable advertising, lots of terms used for the same thing, which is basically targeting ads at individuals and doing it at a per stream level, right? So the idea is that you sell ads based on the individual consumer, and every time somebody presses play, they're going to get an ad that is tailored to them. And the opportunity for the for the service providers that implement these dynamic ad insertion types of platforms is that they can increase the amount of money they make off of those ad spaces, right? I mean, you can imagine legacy kinds of advertising technologies, you picture broadcast advertising and things like that. The same ad goes out to everybody, whether they are likely to buy that or not. Picture the advertisement for diapers. If you have no children, you have no interest in that ad, and that is wasted ad inventory. And so dynamic ad insertion technology is all about not wasting ad inventory, right? You make sure that if you're going to deliver an ad to somebody, that it's going to be of interest to them. And because of that, that's where the economic value comes from in dynamic advertising. It's like advertisers they know there's waste in the system, right? So they know that if you're advertising diapers, there's only maybe 10% of the customers out there are really going to have interest in it. So they're not going to pay for the delivery of the other 90%. So the opportunity for the service provider is basically to say, well, we're never gonna deliver that diaper ad to people that don't want it, and the other 90% of space you can sell to other people, and you can get your full rate for the effectiveness of those ads. So that's really a big opportunity, and I think that it even goes further than that. There are lots of different types of services and ways to use that. I mentioned some of these location-based services. I think that's an interesting place for communication service providers, in particular in partnering with some of the content providers. Oftentimes we talk about that when we go talk to operators, oftentimes they're just looking to achieve parity with what they had in the past, right? So they're launching new IP platforms, they're rolling them out, and they go, I'm shutting down my legacy platform and I had some ad capabilities there. I just want to do the same thing that I did in the past in the new system so I don't lose money in the transition. But I think that's not really taking advantage of the opportunity that dynamic advertising provides, which these network providers are in a great position to activate new types of advertising in different types of services and different ways. And through their conversations with communication service providers, which are way upstream of that, right? I mean, they're looking for that type of addressability, but it's very difficult to implement that kind of stuff at scale. And so this is where communication service providers sit in a very critical position, right? They can enable incremental revenue. It's not just like replacing $1 with another dollar or getting a 10% improvement on that through efficiency. It really is like, let's open up new ad opportunities in new ways. And that's what ISPs and communication service providers can do with some of this dynamic advertising tech.
Okay, sounds good. But how is it done, Craig? What's the technology behind? Where are the levers? Where do you need to tweak? And what's your role in all that?
Yeah, so we have built a product that works very well in this space. It runs both on bare metal or in the cloud, depending on what an operator wants to do. And really, what it does is it's a very flexible product the way it's built, in that we can provide alternate content insertion, advertisement, blackout in certain areas, all based on the same and similar technology. Really, what we're looking for, I think the market is a little bit new in this area, and so really, based on inputs and feeds that we get based on individual subscriber or location, our products are able to personalize on a per stream basis, on a per location basis, et cetera. So, and it's all cloud enabled. We have got an extremely flexible product, so we're well positioned in this space.
Perfect. Thank you for that. I'm looking at the clock. We want to leave a bit of time also for questions, but before we go there, I want to hear from both of you. We talked about many things. Which of these technologies are you most excited about and why? So, Jim, you go first.
Well, today I'm really excited about open caching because today was the announcement. Yeah, so so clearly that's an area that we're invested in, and I'm excited about putting it out in the market. We've been active with it prior to this announcement and talking with customers about it. So it's nice to let the cat out of the bag, so to speak, on some of the activities that we have there. Beyond that, we talked at the end really about ad tech, and we've talked about 5G and we've talked about cloud. I mean, it really, when you look at the market, 5-10 years down the road, all of these topics start to converge, right? The cloud tech and 5G and advertising and everything, it all packages together into what does content delivery, what does TV look like 5-10 years down the road? And so, I think the point that we'd like to share with folks is, if you look at any of these things that we talked about, if you don't have an active strategy or a program or so on to really dig into this stuff and understand not just the technology, but the commercial models that wrap around this is the kind of stuff that we love to talk about, right? It's changing. There's new stuff all the time. We talked to lots of people, but these are the things that ought to be prominent in your mind in 2022 if they're not already, and I suspect for most they are. Those it's hard to pick one, right? It's like your children. Which one is your favorite? They at any point in time, on any day, you might have a favorite, but overall they all look good.
Today it's open caching for you. And Craig, on your side, what's your favorite? Is it also open caching today, or you need to choose another one?
Yeah, so it's open caching today for sure, but open caching and some of the other products that we have, actually, I think one of the underutilized areas is we've got a lot of data. We have a lot of streaming data, and we're able to understand how those streams perform, what operational issues ISPs may have with their current CDNs and other products. And I think one of the underexplored areas is analytics of those, and perhaps any learning that we can do based on that data. I think there's a lot of focus that should be, we need to pay attention to what can we learn from that data? Can we provide operators and their end users a better experience based on analyzing that data and providing some AI capabilities? We have the data, we have the technology, and we really need to explore some use cases in terms of how we can improve the routing, improve the resiliency, reduce latency, et cetera, for end users. So that is one thing I think about is how can we better utilize or more fully utilize the data that we have.
Yeah, absolutely. Because having the data, but seeing it structuring, because you have a lot of data, seeing the forest, not seeing the forest because of all the trees. So you definitely need good analytics for that. Okay, so we have 5 minutes left. We have a few questions, so I might ask you to be brief so we can get at least a few of them. Number one, if open caching improves the quality of OTT services, as we heard, wouldn't that undermine ISP's own IPTV services? That's an interesting one. So,
maybe I can take that one. It is interesting. Actually, we get that question, and I think in the early days of discussing open caching, that was the obvious question. Like, why would I do that? Doesn't it undermine my pay TV service? But in reality, today we have a lot of direct-to-consumer services out there already. People are consuming those services. The market is growing, right? There's no way to stop that from happening. Some of the content assets that are being created are captive in those direct-to-consumer services, right? They're not moving over to pay TV. They're not available on pay TV services, right? So, in our view, the role of a communication service provider is providing consumers with access to content. Okay, however they do that, whether that's through a pay TV service or whether that's through facilitating direct-to-consumer services, The goal is keep customers connected to your network, make sure you deliver great quality and they subscribe to those services. You make it really easy, you give them the best quality, and then figure out how you monetize that, right? The investments that you're making in the network, yeah, you're monetizing it through your IPTV services, but what about, if you're not participating in the value chain associated with where viewership in some places is headed, you are missing a great opportunity to generate incremental revenue for your business. So it's not really a question of whether you're, it's not a trade-off between one or the other, right? You're not really inhibiting anything by not participating in the value chain. Consumers are watching that content. You're carrying it over your network anyway. So the point is just interject yourself into the value chain and start making money from the traffic that you're already delivering.
Okay, so I think we will not be able to answer all the questions, but maybe I go one more. So we talked about cloud, we talked about hybrid cloud. What if an operator says, I want to keep almost everything on premise? What are the things on cloud that the benefits of cloud that you would tell this operators? Okay, why does it make sense to do some things? Or it's okay, there is a point for all on premise as well.
Mm-hmm. Let me grab that one if I may. So yeah, there's definitely benefits to staying on-prem, but I think it's important that operators understand the benefits of being on the cloud as well. There's some really strong advantages that they need to weigh, and those are things like the rapid deployment times. We're able to deploy very rapidly. We're able to expand capacity extremely rapidly. We're able to provide software upgrades, feature upgrades in a more of a CI/CD process in very, very quick order. We can deliver features faster, and we can maintain their system. Auto healing is easier in a cloud environment. So there's a whole lot of operational aspects and improvements that need to be taken into account when they decide whether they prefer on cloud or on-prem.
Yeah,
okay.
I'll actually add a little bit here, Andy, too. I think that the nature of every time we talk about cloud technology, people's attention always think, oh, well, we're going to run this in Amazon Web Services, and that's not necessarily what we're talking about, right? I mean, we can do that. Clearly, we can run tech in Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, all sorts of other places. But there are advantages to some of this cloud tech within on-premises networks as well. So you can deploy virtualized software within, you might characterize them as private clouds, but you can run this stuff on hardware within your own network, and you can still get advantages from it, a lot of advantages around the reliability and resiliency, the automation capabilities, visualization, all that self-healing stuff that Craig talked about. All of that comes along with cloud technologies, and so you can get a lot of, even if you never place the software into these public cloud environments or edge cloud environments within the 5G frameworks, those MEC or multi-access edge compute frameworks, even if you just keep it on the same dedicated hardware that you place inside your network, there are operational advantages that you can get from deploying using cloud-based principles.
Okay, I think we need to wrap it up here. Definitely worth a longer discussion with any operator who is interested in moving into any of these topics. We're running out of time. No, we have run out of time already. Thank you so much, Craig. Thank you, Jim. It was a great discussion. We could have continued another half an hour or an hour, I feel. Dear audience, you will get the recording of this very, very soon. I know we haven't been able to answer all the questions. I'm very sorry for that, but please reach out to Jim or to Craig. You see their email addresses here. Send them the questions. They will get back to you. And on behalf of all of us, I say also thank you very much. Stay safe, stay healthy. Merry Christmas. No, it's this way. Merry Christmas. And Happy New Year. All the best to all of you, and see you soon in another panel by Velocix, and all the best. Take care. Goodbye. Bye, everyone.